It was also from the same Farbrengen from Shabbos Parsh Mishpatim Chav Daled Shvat. If you remember, we spoke in yesterday's Sikha about the 24th of Shvat. I think it's the same Farbrengen. Okay, so the Rebbe speaks immediately on the first pasuk of this week's Parsha. We'ela Mishpatim Shetasim Lefneihem. These are the Mishpatim, the laws that you shall place before them. Kisikna Eved Ivri, that you will acquire, or when you will acquire, a Hebrew servant. And it's known the examination of this, the analysis of this, in the Mamorim of our Rebbeim, our leaders. And the Rebbe in the brackets goes through that this is starting from the Alter Rebbe and other Rebbeim until even the Frierdiker Rebbe all speak about this pasuk. Skip the brackets to the next line. The Tzarech Lahavim, we need to understand. Hine lifneihem hu lashon rabim. When it says before them, it says it in the plural. In other words, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you will set the following laws that I'm about to tell you, you will place it before them. Before them, meaning the Jewish people. So you're referring to the Jewish people in the plural. Lefneihem, before them. And then afterward he says, V'chisikna, when you will acquire, but it uses the singular for you. In English, plural you and the singular you is the same, but in Hebrew it's different. So why does he speak, if he's talking about Klal Yisrael, that will acquire a servant? So just like earlier in the pasuk, he said lefneihem, before them, in the plural. It should have said kisikna in the sing. Why does it say it in the singular? V'havel elameimar kiyiknu. It should have said when they will acquire. He doesn't explicitly ask it right over here, but if you also notice, he changes from you will acquire to they will acquire. Because in other Mamorim he points out that he switches from third person to second person, meaning lifneihem, before them. Them, he, they, them, her, that's all third person. You, whether plural or singular, that's second person. So just like we asked, why does he switch from plural to singular? Also, it should have not switched from third person to second person. He should have stayed in third person. That's why it says that it should have said when they will acquire. Because when it says that you will acquire a Hebrew servant, this is referring back to one of the laws that you will place before them. It's one of the laws that you will place before them in the plural. So just like before them is in the plural, so the same thing, it should be speaking about when they, the plural, when the people will acquire a Hebrew servant. Another question is, what's the idea of emphasizing before them? What's the idea of before them? What's that concept? Just tell them when you will teach them the laws, teach them about the laws of Eved Ivri and all the other laws that it speaks about in Parsh Mishpat. That he begins Mishpatim in the laws of a Hebrew servant. The Lachurim seemingly inyan zeshal din Eved Ivri hu davar bilti ragel bilti tader kalal. Seemingly the law of a Hebrew servant is something that's not usual and not common whatsoever. Especially the particular situation that he's referring to over here in this pasuk. So the Rebbe says in the parentheses, especially that's the way it's understood from what the Chazal say, and it's brought down in Rashi's commentary on the Torah. You mean you need different conditions that there should be a law of a Hebrew servant that speaks about over here. Some of the conditions are, it needs to be, we're talking here about a case where someone stole something and he didn't have money to pay back what he owes, what he stole. So then Bezdin will sell him because of his, to be able to pay back the money. So in other words, this is a very unusual situation. So why does the Torah begin all the laws of Mishpatim with a very uncommon case? As opposed to the halachas that are explained afterwards in the parsha, are more common and more often occurring things. So why does the Torah begin with something that's very uncommon and out of the ordinary? Why does it begin specifically with this halacha? Other cases deal with ownership issues, with loans, with issues of more common type of damages and so on. So those are more common type of laws. If you were going to begin a book of laws, you should have started, a parsha of laws, you should have started with more common and then go on to the exception. Also, we need to understand, what's the exact language that he uses when you will acquire, and not another type of expression. When you have a Hebrew servant, when a Hebrew servant is maybe sold to you, there's many different ways how it could speak about how a person is dealing with a Hebrew servant. What's the emphasis on acquisition? What's the point of emphasizing over here that he was acquired by you? And there's more and additional examinations and analysis in this pasuk, in the both the Mamorim of Arabeim, also also the commentaries on Chumash also speak about this. It's not just that the Rabbeim speak about these questions. Different commentaries on Chumash speak about different questions over here that arise at the beginning of this parsha. So the Rebbe says in the second paragraph on the Kudus Abir Bazehi, the point of the explanation of all these things is the mashakos of kisik neloshin yachid. When it says you will acquire, it's not referring to Klal Yisrael. It's not referring to all the Yidden, but rather koi adol elmenei. It's referring back to what it says previous to this. The chsiv that it says ve'ela mishpatim asher tasim. It says in first person singular. It says these are the laws that you will place. Tasim lashon yachid. You will place these laws. Who is the you over there? The Indians, the kisikna, just like Tasim is referring to Moshe Rabbeinu, that the kisikna you will acquire is referring to Moshe Rabbeinu also. The Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that acquires the Hebrew servant. All of them are concerning Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, Asher Tasim Lefneim, you will place these mishpatim before them. So these laws that you will place before them, it begins and it starts off with Moshe Rabbeinu's acquiring a Hebrew servant. The Hini Omer Razal, the Razal say, Huvu Pirish Rashi, it's brought down in Pirish Rashi. Why does it say Ve'ela HaMishpatim that Asher Tasim Lefneim? What does it mean? And these are the Mishpatim. Just said, Elam Mishpatim Shtasim Lefneim. These are the laws you shall place before them. What's and these are the laws? Ve'ela Moisif al Rashonim. The Vav is called in Lashon Kodesh a Vav HaMoisif, a Vav that adds, meaning that it's a continuation to what it said earlier. That when it talks about the Mishpatim, it talks about the civil laws, it's a continuation of what it says earlier in the Chumash. Just like the first ones, the earlier ones, meaning that what speaks about in Parshas Yisro, it speaks about Matan Torah, it speaks about the Aseres HaDibros coming directly from Hashem. So don't think that when you're dealing with civil laws are something that are intellectual. Civil laws are rational. So maybe these are laws that we could say were man-made. So the Torah tells you, Ve'ela המשפטים. Ma rishonim misinaf elu misinai, just like the first ones, meaning the Aseres HaDibros in last week's parsha came on Har Sinai and was given to Moshe Rabbeinu. The same thing with these laws. Ukashem Moshe kibul Torah misinai, just like Moshe received the Torah on Har Sinai, meaning the Aseres HaDibros, which everybody saw and knew. Kach kibul gam mishpatim elu misinai. So too he received the rational, civil, logical laws of Parshat Mishpatim. He also received it from Har Sinai. And concerning the laws, it says that you will place lifneihem. We asked before, why does it have to say lifneihem? So the simple meaning of lifneihem means before them, in front of them. But on a deeper meaning, the Pirush lifneihem, what's it mean? Lifneihem means Hainu lipnimiyusam, that you are supposed to place these laws in such a way that it comes down into them internalized. Hainu she'inyan zayumshach gam b'pnimiyus hanefesh, that the laws that you place before them should also come down in the innermost aspects of the soul, and therefore, because it becomes internalized in the soul, it expresses itself in every part of the soul. Therefore, it will permeate all matters until it will also permeate their thought, speech, and deed. It won't just remain theoretical because the laws became part of them, it became internalized. Another meaning of lifneihem, v'gam lifneihem, koi al pnimius ha'toira befrat. It's referring to specifically to the inner part of the Torah. Again, lefneim is a play on the word pnimius. So the first thing we said, it goes internalized into the Yidden. But also, what part of the Torah? It's the pnimius of the Torah, the innermost aspect of the Torah has to be revealed also. Like it's brought down the Yerushalmi, the Tosim, Yerushalmi, like all the other Mefarshim, want to know why specifically the Torah uses over here the word Tosim. So Tosim is phonetically similar to the word Sima, Humaloshin Sima. The word Sima is Shuhu Inyan Shal Oitzer, is a matter of a treasure. Now,
did I get my name?
Yes. So the sima is the treasure. The pnimius ha-Torah bechinas ha-oitzer sheba-Torah. The inner part of the Torah is the treasure of the Torah. This is similar to what it says in the Basel Lagani Mamorim, that for the sake of winning the war, the king reveals and expands and gives away treasures that were hidden away by himself and by his forefathers, all the way that no one ever saw them. So the same thing, the pnimius, that's the pnimius ha-Torah that's given away so that we should be able to be victorious in the war. So that's what it means, lifneihem, and that's what it means tosim from the word sima, the oitzer, the treasure of the Torah, that it needs to be transmitted to the Yidden. This is the novelty and uniqueness of this parsha. ואלה המשפטים, שאף שמשפטים הם דברים פשוטים המובנים בשכל אנושי. Though mishpatim are simple things that are understood in human intellect, these are things that are completely logical, different than chukim, which are super rational laws, and not even like edus, which is ceremonial laws, but they're completely logical laws. Would heaven forbid not have been given? We would have learned modesty from a cat and other types of good traits from different types of animals. Surely from human beings we would have learned the logical laws, and we wouldn't have needed the Torah to be given for that purpose. But, so you might think that when you're dealing with laws that have a logic to them, that's all it is. When you're dealing with a super rational law that makes no sense in logic and rational thought, so then you figure out there must be some type of inner meaning over here. There must be some type of secret, some type of deep mystical intention. But when you're dealing with a simple thing of torts and laws and to whom belongs what, and what happens if you damage something with someone, and how do you divide the field, and different things like that. These are logical laws. It's exact. What you see is what you get. So we're saying no. Still in all. Also in the inner, also in these most simple, rational, logical laws, there is the inner component. They are a treasure. A very inner and high thing is concealed even in the most rational laws. Once we know that the most rational laws has in it deep secrets, so now we can understand that the way we have to look at the laws in our parsha, beginning with the law of the Hebrew servant, but the law of the Eved Ivri, has to be beyond just the simple application of the law. There must be something much deeper to it. It begins with the law of a Hebrew servant. Because the spiritual service, meaning the inner part, the treasure of this law, has to be by every single person. That's why the parsha begins with Eved Ivri, because by every Yid, no matter how high that Yid is, we'll soon explain, which is transcends just serving Hashem as a servant. He might be considered serving Hashem like a child and so on. Still in all, every Jew has to have the idea of the Hebrew servant type of service of Hashem. So the Rebbe goes on and says, Va'inyan, second line of the last paragraph of the page, it says in the pasuk, that Hashem told the Navi, I planted the house of Yisrael, human seed and animal seed. In other words, two types of neshamas, two types of people. People are people, and people are more like animal people. It's explained in many places that in general, that the Jewish souls are divided into two levels: human seed and animal seed. The zera behema hu inyan shaloylum al yusa. Animal seed is something that is not a positive, not such a good thing. But despite him being an animal, you need to make him, you need to break him in. You need to make him into a servant. You need to affect in him that he should be a servant. The idea of an eved, of a servant, is accepting upon himself the yoke of heaven. Though a Hebrew servant is a low level, and higher than Eved Ivri is the Hebrew maidservant, like it's explained in the Mamarim. So why are we focusing on a lower level when this is seemingly a low level amongst Yidden? Still in all, the beginning of a person's avodah, that's on the level of zera behema, that's like a wild animal. You need to rein him in, you need to break the animal, you need to make sure that it becomes a servant of Hashem. Before it could be a child and so on. First thing is Kabbalah soil, accepting Hashem's commands. In addition to that, we're not just talking about people that are from the level of the Bnei Yisrael that's called Zera Behema, that they need to have the level of Eved Ivri, but also the Gam Mishu, top of the next page, also someone that is Mibchina Zera Adam, meaning usually Tzadikim, He's in the level of a Zera Adam. He's a higher type of soul. After all is said and done, his neshama was enclosed in an animal soul. And the animal soul was enclosed in the physical material body, that the root of the physical, the root of Nefesh Bahamis is from the mountains of separation. It's a term for klippos. The klippos are separated from godliness, and they're mountains, they're egotistical. And also, these higher neshamas, the neshamas that are called human seed, have a connection with the world via the body. Therefore, even the higher level of neshamas, even those neshamas that are called Zera Adam, human seed, still in all mitam zeh, bekol Adam tzrich aliyas ha'avoda b'chinas eved, she b'chinas kabolos oil bittul. Every single person needs to have the avoda of a servant, which shows on kabolos oil and bittul. So it's not just like we have in Perek Mem Aleph that says that the reishis ha'avoda v'ikar v'sharsha is the recognition and knowing that Hashem is the boss and we are a servant of Hashem. But in every person, even if he's more advanced in his avodah, even if he is a Zera Adam, he also needs to have the avodah of Eved. And he's going to explain how necessary that is. Move about the Rushim 4 lines from the top, like it's brought down the Mabodim, She'avodah Meloshen Oiros Avodim. The word avodah, which is normally translated as service, is also from the expression used worked, reworked, and overworked hides. What are you doing when you work hides? You are transforming a very coarse material into something much more fine. You are reworking and changing his nature and his habit, just like when you take a piece of coarse animal hide and you transform it to turn it into parchment. The same thing when a person does is the level of Eved. The level of Eved is about changing, reworking himself, his entire nature and his habits. Like it's brought down the Gemara that it says in the pasuk that you will see the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, between someone that serves Hashem to someone that didn't serve Hashem. And the Gemara explains tzaddik v'rasha, that's not the same thing like someone that serves Hashem and someone that doesn't serve Hashem. It could be that someone that doesn't serve Hashem is also a good person. He's not a rasha. But still in all, it's talking about he didn't change himself like we're talking about over here. Like the Alter Rebbe brings down Tanya from this Gemara. It's not the same. Someone that reviews his chapter 100 times to someone that reviews it 101 times. Meaning that the times of the Gemara, it was customary to review everything because they didn't write down the oral Torah, so everything was reviewed 100 times. So that was habit, that was normal, that was not going out of the ordinary. But when is it considered that a person did avodah? When is it considered an oved alakim? When he changed himself, when he broke out of his habit, and he reviewed his chapter 101 times. Im kol perushim shebadavar, all the different explanations about the significance of this 100, 101, being an Oved Olakim, not being an Oved Olakim. The point of all the explanations is the number 100 is the nature and the habit of a person. Part of it is also because the number of 100 is 10 times 10. The person's koiches and nefesh spheres are divided into 10. 10 times 10, which is 100, is each one of these having 10. So that means his normal set amount. As opposed to 101, that means he reached deeper in his soul. He had to reach beyond his 10 koiches on nefesh. So zeu inyan shel kabolos oil, that's the idea of accepting the yoke of heaven. And avoida from the word reworked hides, that he works and he changes his nature and his habit. So that's the point, that even a tzaddik needs to have the quality of being an Ovid Alakim, and because he needs to have this quality of being an Ovid Alakim, the Eved Ivri of our Parsha, and what it talks about the Eved Ivri, addresses not just those people that need to deal with controlling their animal, but also the tzaddik, who himself doesn't need to really control his animal, but he's invested in an animal and deals with the world and deals with the body and needs to also break out of his habits and so on. So therefore the idea of Eved applies by him as well. So now you continue, second paragraph on the second page. That's what it says when you will acquire a Hebrew servant. 6 years he shall work. And the 7th year he will go out free, for free, without any charge. What does this message come to teach us? That this avoida of accepting the yoke of heaven, it's in the entire cycle of time, that the cycle of time is included in the number 6. 7th day is Shabbos, it's out of the normal cycle. 7th year is Shemitah, it's again out of the normal cycle. The bedugmas Sheish Shanim v'Shana Shvi is just like there's 6 years in the 7th year. Yesh Sheish Yamim v'Yem Shabbos, there's 6 days, and there's a day of Shabbos. And in a similar vein, there are 7 Shemitahs, and following that, there's the Yovel. Similar type of idea. The Chol Yom v'Yom Yesh Lo Koychai. Every single day has its own energy. And therefore, we need to serve Hashem with the energy of this particular day, whatever representative is of this energy of this day. Like it's brought down in the Zohar. And another expression that the Zohar says is that every single day has its particular job. So therefore, when we're saying that the person has to work for 6 years, that means that the entire cycle of time, a person needs to have the level of avodah, of Kabbalah's oil, to be this Hebrew servant, the level of oiris avodah. Therefore, over here he specifies Inyan Shei Shonim Yavoid, that 6 years you have to work. It's coming to teach us that the avoid in a way of Kabbalah's oil, in a way of a Hebrew servant, has to be in all the time. And afterwards comes the 7th day, that's the day of Shabbos. And just like in the week, Shabbos is not a day of work, so too in years. The Sheishonim Yavoid, 6 years he shall work with acceptance of the yoke of heaven. In the 7th year he will go out free. You could say that it's referring, like he says at the end of the Maimer, referring to Mashiach's times. So now we are still in the cycle of the number 6, that we have to do everything in a way of Kabbalah soil. When Mashiach comes, that's going to be the 7th year. We will not be doing it in a way of avodas eved. It will be in a totally different manner. So now, the Maimer is going to explain what is the kisikna that we said before, that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that acquires, and specifically the term that's used is acquisition, no other type of term of owning the servant. So he says on the second paragraph on the page, the third paragraph on the page, but this will be understood where it says, when you will acquire the lechura in a movement, seemingly it's not understood. How is it possible for someone that we said is from the animal seed, that by nature he's wild, by nature he's not restrained, he's not broken in? How can he reach a state of being a Hebrew servant that will have Kabbalah soil? Even like we said before, there are those neshamas that are human seed, Still in all, we said, Harein is slavish bezera behema. He's enclosed in animal seed because he's enclosed in an animal soul, which is enclosed in the body, which he interacts with the world. So how can we manage to overcome all that and be an Eved Ivri, to have this Kabbalah soil and this Avoida and so on? He knows Omer for this. The pasuk illuminates this for us and says, Ki sikna lashon kinyan dafke v'loy lashon acher. He uses specifically the word sikna, which is the expression of acquiring something, and not a different type of expression. Why? Mishum she'inyan ha'kinyan moire she'en kan shinui beguf hadavar elo rach shinui reshus. Acquisition indicates that nothing changed in the actual item that's acquired, but it's only a change of ownership. It passes over from the domain, from the ownership of the seller to the ownership of the buyer. Nothing new occurs with this item. It's only being revealed that now this belongs to him when previously that wasn't open and revealed. What does that mean spiritually? The explanation this is, it says in the pasuk, that across the river your forefathers settled or lived. That's why Yidden are called Ivri, because they come from Ever Anar, across the river. What is the spiritual significance of across the river? The Hainu Shemok and Neshamas Yisrael, the source of Jewish souls, Gam B'chinas Zera Behema, even those lower souls that are called the animal seed, Hu B'chinas Ever Hanar, it's across the river. Shalamayla Miseder Ishtalshlos, across the river means beyond the chain order of descent, the flow of the entire Seder Ishtalshlos. This is beyond that flow, beyond that river. And the fact that he comes from animal seed, how does that fit in with the fact that he's beyond Seder Ishtalshlos? Kosher and Bechinas Behema Rabba Shalifne Atzilus. It's connected with a level that's brought down in Tanya that says that beyond Atzilus there's the great animal. It's a level that's very, very high. It's called the great animal. And that is where the animal seed by us comes from. So in other words, what we are doing is connecting and revealing and acquiring. We're just moving it over and bringing and revealing how our higher behema is really who we are. Now, what about someone that's not a behema? What's his connection? Also someone that's from human seed, so he doesn't have this great level of Harden Seder Shtalshus. He doesn't come from this great behema that's before Atzilus. Still in all, kosher and bechinas ma'oid is connected with the level of ma'oid. Ma'oid also shows on Harden Seder Shtalshus. Ma'oid means very much. Ma'oid Chassidus is always explaining, goes on bligvul. Toiv means it's good, but it's limited good. Toiv ma'oid, very good, shows it's higher than Seder Shtalshlos. Why is Adam connected with Ma'oid? Shu Adam betziruf acher. The letters Ma'oid are a different combination of the letters Adam. That shows that the word Adam is related to Ma'oid. So just like a person that's a Zera Behema is connected with the level of the Behema Rabbah that's higher than Atzilus, and the acquisition is about bringing that out, revealing that. The same thing, those neshamas that are Zera Adam, it's about bringing out and revealing how they are inherently having to do with the level that's higher than Adam, the level of Ma'oid. Therefore, how is this brought down in the Yidden? It's not something new that has to be accomplished. You're not creating something from whole cloth, but you're only revealing what's concealed over there. That's why the pasuk chooses specifically the language of kisikna, not any other language, because kinyan, acquisition, indicates just revealing something that was already there. Second paragraph from the bottom. The kisikna lashon yachid. That's also why it says when you will acquire in the singular. Like we said before, that this is Moshe's job. The Chsiv Bey that says concerning Moshe, Kimina Mayim Shisium Shesharshem Mishmita Niles Yosef. That when it says Moshe Rabbeinu was called Moshe because I drew him out of the water. Chassidus explains that the water that it's referring to is similar to what says that there was a division, the rakia, the firmament divided between higher waters and lower waters, and this means something that's called a higher level of Shemitah, a higher cycle of Shemitah, meaning higher than Seder Shtalshus. Not going to go into explaining Shemitah, but Shemitah goes again on cycles. He was from a higher cycle. Ours is what's called a second cycle of Shemitah. He came from a higher level, meaning Ma'olam Naila Yosef from a much higher world. So because he came from there, he was able to cause this transition and revelation by the Yidden. Therefore, it's specifically in the power and the capability of Moshe Rabbeinu to draw this down in every single Yid. Whether someone is in a level of human seed, or someone is a level of animal seed, since Moshe comes to such a high level, he's able to draw it down and reveal by them their true essence that's higher than Seder Ishtalshus. Last paragraph on the page, Valpi Kol Anal, according to all of the above. Yuvan HaHemshech, the Parsha Zula, Parshas Matan Torah, it will be understood the connection why this parsha comes after Matan Torah. Like we said, Ve'ela, Moisav al Rishonim, Ve'ela Mishpatim, the Vav at the beginning of the parsha, means that this is connected what took place in Matan Torah. The Inyan Matan Torah, Inyan Amshach Sa Torah Malmayla Mata. The idea of the giving of the Torah is about drawing down the Torah from above to below. Mashenk in Parshas Ve'ela Mishpatim, as opposed to the Parsha Ve'ela Mishpatim, Shabbat Mavarim Tvarim Amavanim, Gam Seichel Anushi. In Parsha Mishpatim, it's also explained matters that are understood by human intellect. Harei Inyana who live at Torah Malmata Lamayla. The idea of Mishpatim is things that I understand. So it's the study of Torah, not the way it's revealed from above, but it's coming from down below. Pashtas Inyan, like the simple matter is, the Nesinas HaTorah Haisamal Maila, that the giving of the Torah was from above, like it says, I spoke with you from the heavens. When we study Torah, we're supposed to not go to the highest, the most difficult. We go first from the easiest part, and then we go to the more difficult part. How you do like the well-known expression, when a child begins to speak, Aviv Malamde Torah, his father begins to teach him Torah, and afterwards, when he's 5 years old, he starts learning Chumash, 10 years old, Mishnah, 15-year-old Gemara, etc., etc. So we see that when the person's human intellect is brought into the Torah study, it has to be step by step, easier to more difficult. Ad sheba lefneim lepnimius, till it comes to the level of lefneim to the pnimius, both the pnimius of the Torah and the pnimius of the person that's internalized. Ad shemegia lebechinas yagdol Torah v'yadir, till he reaches a level where he makes the Torah grow and he glorifies it. In other words, that a person adds to the Torah and contributes and expands on the Torah more than what it says. That's the ultimate perfection of Torah, is when he reaches that stage that he could add an increase in Torah. Until he joins Torah and Hashem. And even more than joining the Torah with Hashem, through the perfection of Torah study, we make this place into a perfect place. It's somewhat like a vessel and a preparation for a revelation of a level that's completely beyond the inspiration down here below. In other words, there are things that we could draw down because of our inspiration down here below. There are things we can't even draw down. We can only create the environment that it should be inviting for that Hamshachah to come down. Until we reach through our Torah study to the level that I consider it as if you made me. That's what it says when Yidden learn Torah and do mitzvahs. The Rebbe concludes with a bracha, v'hi rotzen, should be the will of Hashem, shaydei avodah b'beis hakaven sheb'Torah, through the avodah in both aspects of Torah, the Torah that comes from above to below, and the Torah that comes from below to above. Novi b'karav mamish l'siyama inyan will come speedily to the conclusion of the matter, the sheish shanim yavid of the 6 years you shall work. The koyal shis alfishin the hava alma, it's referring to the 6,000 years that the world exists. The year inyan im levnoi yadana, then it will be the matter if he will give her as a wife to his son, that this refers to the Yidden's marriage with Hashem. Ad v'yotza chinam ein kosef, until she will go out free without money, meaning kosef chinam nimkartem v'loy bekesef the geelu. It says this about the geula, you were sold for no money, and you will not be redeemed by money. So the same thing, we will go out of golus in a way of non-monetary going. The Yisrael came even more so. The kivin sheyesh inyan toisves Shabbos with toisves shvius. We know there's a concept called, in halacha, one needs to add to Shabbos. And not all, so one should not wait till the last minute before Shkia to start Shabbos. But just like women liked 18 minutes before Shkia, and even men that technically can do malacha, but they shouldn't either wait till the very last second before Shkia, because there's a mitzvahs aseh to add to Shabbos. So a person has to at least give themselves a few minutes before actual sunset to add to Shabbos. And in a similar vein, just like there's adding to Shabbos, there's also Tosfos Shvius, that the idea of Shemitah doesn't begin on the first day of Tishrei, but actually it begins in Elul before the Shemitah year. So just like in Halacha, there is Shabbos and Shvius that begin beforehand, that the Shemitah begins beforehand. So in the similar vein, when we're talking about the spiritual Shabbos of Mashiach's times, the spiritual Shemitah of Mashiach's times, we shouldn't have to wait till 6,000 years are up. In the Oid B'siyam Elef Hashishi, already at the conclusion of the 6th millennium. In other words, while we're still before the 6,000 years are over, similar to before Friday concludes. That boim we come b'shayta chada b'riga chada in one moment the l'bias m'shiach tzedkenu me'er me'enu mamish to the coming m'shiach tzedkenu speed.